Well, hey there, I'm Joshua Johnson. It's great to be with you on this Wednesday, May 11th, and here is some of what we're talking about tonight. Congress is pushing ahead with more support for Ukraine, $40 billion worth. How much will that help defend eastern Ukraine? Intelligence officials say Russia is on the verge of taking control there. President Biden connects the war in Ukraine to high food prices at home. We'll get into his plans to help America's farmers get by. Plus, those seasonal sniffles might not be allergies this year, but the flu. An immunologist explains what's going on and what you can do to stay safe. And an Andy Warhol painting is now the most expensive American artwork ever. We'll explore the world of art auctions with a reporter who was there when the hammer fell. So the United States says that it will support Ukraine until the very end of this war. That support is paying off, and now a lot more may be on the way. Last night, the House approved another aid package worth $40 billion. It has yet to pass the Senate. Congress already approved $13 billion in March. This is more aid overall than the U.S. has given any country in at least 20 years. And House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is pushing for this latest package.
As Putin desperately accelerates his campaign of horror and brutality, Mr. Speaker, horror and brutality in Ukraine, time is of the essence. America's continue to move together with our allies to level a historic punishment against Putin for his senseless aggression.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky thanked the speaker after the vote in that tweet, and he said that he looks forward to the Senate's consideration. President Zelensky also seemed optimistic about at least some of the war. He says that Ukrainian forces have pushed Russian troops out of villages near the northeastern city of Kharkiv. Let's pick up with that and NBC's Cal Perry, who joins us now from Kyiv. Cal, tell us more about what's happening in Kharkiv, what happened there, and what that does to the balance of the war.
So this is kind of the northern front, if you like, of this war. In the southern front, you have these airstrikes. The eastern front really seems to be an artillery war right now. And the northern front is the on-the-ground fighting that we're seeing between Ukrainian army forces, including some Ukrainian Marines, some Ukrainian special forces, we believe, and against sort of Russian troops. There are 4 villages in the Kharkiv area that have been liberated by Ukrainian forces in the last 24 to 48 hours, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. There are 2 villages where we believe Russian troops are mounting sort of a counterattack, where there's sort of a back and forth between who controls these villages. For the people who live there, this is everything, of course. You have people who live in this border area, many of whom, according to the Ukrainian government, have been forced to move to Russia, many of whom are still hunkered down in these villages. So it matters very, very much where that front line is, and we understand, Joshua, that the front line is sort of constantly shifting, constantly changing.
You spent some time with the Ukrainian military team that is responsible for recovering the bodies of dead Russian soldiers. Speaking of what's happening on the front lines, I understand you have some video to show us that may be rather graphic, but walk us through what they told you and what you learned.
So certainly a graphic and disturbing story, but an important one to the people here in Ukraine who are trying to find answers as to what happened and who invaded this country. You had this invasion that reached the suburbs of Kyiv. You had soldiers who hunkered down, Russian soldiers who hunkered down in these villages, in these suburbs of the capital. And then when the Russian army retreated and was attacked, they left behind dead soldiers. We were with a team from the Ukrainian military today as they exhumed the body of a Russian soldier again from the woods of a suburb here in Kyiv. The majority of the people that they are finding, and you see this video there now, the majority of the people they're finding don't have identifications on them. There are 20, 21-year-old males. There are more than 200 bodies that have been discovered in 5 provinces here. They're kept in 6 train containers, and the Ukrainian government says they're trying to work with the Russian government to return these bodies, and they say that the Russian government is just not interested in a prisoner exchange, an exchange of bodies, so they don't know what to do with these bodies. Some they can identify, and some they can't. They're asking for the families of those who have missing sons and brothers and fathers in Russia to send DNA samples, but as we know very well, the Russian government does not share this this video with the people in Russia. So it is a way to try to find answers for this country, for the people who lived here, for the people who lost relatives here, to try to understand who exactly invaded the country, where they came from, and why, Joshua.
Can I just back up to something you just said, Cal? It sounded like you said that the Ukrainians are trying to return the bodies of the dead to Russia, and Russia doesn't want them?
So according to Ukrainian officials that we spoke to today on scene, yes, they are trying to return some of these bodies, and there has been no response from Russian officials. The officials added today that they believe that Russian forces are burning the bodies of Russian soldiers on the front lines so that they don't need to return them to Russia, that they have evidence, they say, for operational security reasons they would not share with us. And again, we cannot independently verify this at NBC News, but that Russian soldiers are taking with them crematoriums, vehicles. And we've heard this intelligence shared before. It's all a long way of saying that the way that Russia presents this war to its people is difficult when you look at the reality on the ground here, and that's saying it mildly. You have hundreds of bodies of Russian soldiers laying in coolers in these rail cars, and you have the Ukrainian government just doesn't know what to do with them. Now, it's very important for the Ukrainian government that they document this war and they document what happened here. So these bodies are important, and the things they find on these bodies are important, and that's all important for the historical record. But of course, there are families in Russia that will never reunite with their loved ones.
Speaking of documenting this war, before I got to let you go, Ukrainian officials said that they are getting ready to hold their first war crimes trial of a Russian soldier who is in Ukrainian custody. What more do we know about that?
So this is a young sergeant who was part, again, of this initial invasion. And allegedly, according to Ukrainian prosecutors, this young soldier executed a civilian at the end of February, that he was ordered by his commanding officer to shoot an unarmed civilian who was on a cell phone. The concern amongst the unit was that this civilian was going to share the location of this Russian military unit. The Russian military unit at the time was on the run. Again, it was hit by Ukrainian forces. The unit was split. But the larger picture here is you have the prosecutor here in Ukraine, and they have not announced a trial date yet. But you have the prosecutor here in Ukraine pushing forward with what will undoubtedly be a public trial. And again, the bigger picture here is to document these war crimes for the Ukrainian people. So many people now are trying to return home. 2/3 of the capital here in Kyiv, that's some 2 million people now are returning to their homes. And people want answers. They want to know how and why their loved ones were killed. And this trial, I think, is an attempt for the Ukrainian government to answer some of those questions, Joshua.
Thank you, Cal. Much appreciated. That's NBC's Cal Perry starting us off tonight in Kyiv. Take a minute to imagine what this war must be like for Ukraine's children. Most of them are displaced from their homes. UNICEF says these kids face significant mental health risks, and it's easy to see why, with the trauma of experiencing physical and, unfortunately, occasionally, sexual violence. And then there's all the care that children need under normal circumstances. So what should be done to get these kids all the services that they need? And, other than Russia, what's standing in the way of that? Let's get into all that with NBC News public health analyst, Dr. Erwin Redlener. He recently returned from the region. He's also co-founder of the new Ukraine Children's Action Project. Dr. Redlener, it's so good to see you, sir. Welcome back. It's good to have you on.
Thanks, Josh. Good to see you.
I can only imagine what these kids are going through, Doc. What did you see? You were in Poland, as I understand it, talking to refugee Ukrainian children. How are they doing?
Right.
What are they dealing with?
Well, really, that's exactly why Karen Redlener and I went there, because we were so concerned about how these children were faring. After all, they've been incredibly traumatized. We heard stories that we just could not believe out of the mouths of some of these kids and the people taking care of them. One mom talked about how she left the apartment building she was in near Mariupol and leaving the little caravan of her neighbors and friends. This is in the middle of the night when the shelling began. She got about 2 miles outside of her town, and a missile hit the car directly in front of her, blowing it to smithereens, including the children inside. And there are many, many stories like this, and lots of people who have been leaving just because they were afraid of the encroaching, crazy amount of violence. This is something that we've never seen before in our lifetimes, but this mass attack on civilians, innocent civilians, has been horrendous. About 13 million people, Josh, have actually moved from their homes, some to other places safer in Ukraine, but many have moved to places like Poland. And Poland has accepted with extraordinary generosity a lot of these families, but the kids are struggling. You know, some of them are, you know, kids are quite resilient often, but they are completely now disconnected from the lives that they had known. They're not going to school. These are, you know, children who are traumatized, as are their moms, who they mostly have left with. And they need psychological first aid, and they need long-term counseling, and they need to get back in school. And that's the reason we set up this new organization that we'll have the website live pretty soon. But in the meantime, we just think a lot more needs to get done, Josh.
Right. Can you walk me through what's happening now? I mean, paint me a picture. So there's a mother and a child or children who show up at a camp like this. There are people ready to help. What's that process like? Is there someone who triages them? Is there like an intake group? Is it like psychology's over there and then immunology's over there? Like, how is it set up to receive these families?
Well, I guess our wishful thinking would be that it would be highly coordinated, and obviously in the beginning there were just thousands and thousands, ultimately millions of people who would get on trains, leave the country, end up in train stations in places like Warsaw, in one of their 3 train stations. They get off the train, and there would be various aid groups who are waiting for them, saying, okay, we're going to take you to the Norwegian Refugee Council Center, for example, or we're going to take you, there are people, a lot of people, incredible number of people in Poland, Joshua, were taking families in. But on the other hand, there were also some scattered, terrifying reports of people not so honorable picking up kids and, you know, taking them, and hopefully that's now stopped. But the level of coordination on the local level is okay, and Warsaw is doing actually a tremendous job. You know, the mayor there is a fantastically dynamic guy. He's deeply concerned and focused on what should be happening with these families, and that mayor is doing all that he can. But in terms of the large international organizations, we're hoping that more coordination will actually happen for the big picture. Although my experience with refugees in Greece, Syrian refugees in Greece, and you know, after the famines and droughts in Africa and so on, that the level of coordination we might hope for is not happening. And the other challenge, Joshua, is to get the programs, the responsive programs to help people up to scale. In other words, you'll see a program taking care of, you know, 1,000, 2,000 people doing a great job. But if we're dealing with 2 million, we need a lot more resources and coordination to get that to happen. But in the meantime, you know, on the very local level, we have a lot of needy families, and hopefully they'll be getting the stuff that they need.
I got to say, Doc, this is one of those stories that I think since the war began, the needs of women and children have been very much on the minds of a lot of our viewers and now podcast listeners. We got a message from Demi, who shared her thoughts on this war's impact on children and mothers. Here's what she left in our inbox.
So the world's mothers are involved now because we do not want them hurting the mothers and the children who sleep and play and work there. So the most treacherous thing of all is that another country comes against a small country who has mothers and children there that die. That is the most cruelest and fierce, heartbreaking thing that any country could ever sit there and watch.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. Dr. Redlener, what's your sense of where the immediate needs are that can be met, whether it's by non-governmental organizations, nonprofits, or by large governments like the U.S. government, the EU, and so on? Like, where can the rest of the world plug in right away to make the biggest difference quickly for these kids?
Right. So Karen and I just wrote an op-ed in the Daily Beast really on this point, which is that there are certainly things that the United Nations agencies, UNICEF, big national governments like the U.S. need to do, and they are trying. But on the other hand, individuals, moms like Demi who just spoke to us, I have a very important point to make as well. We went into one shelter for Ukrainian families, and they had a suggestion box, and the children would write on a little piece of paper, you know, what they wanted. And I need a T-shirt. I'd like a soccer ball. Very simple human needs. On the other hand, the schools that are enrolling, the schools in Poland that are enrolling Ukrainian teenagers, those kids have nothing to do in the summertime. In fact, they won't have the feeding programs available that they do get while they're in school. So there are schools, and something we're interested in supporting, schools that will need to be setting up summer programs for these Ukrainian children. So lots of needs that can be solved by individuals, by corporations, by small not-for-profit organizations, and for the large, huge organizations that need to be in this as well. The question you might ask, Josh, which I think you did, which is, who's coordinating all this? And right now, my answer is not sure.
NBC News public health analyst Dr. Erwin Redlener, I appreciate the work that you're doing over there and just coming back and bearing witness to how things are going and where the need is. Thank you, Dr. Redlener. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Joshua. Thank you.
President Biden is blaming the war for rising inflation. Still to come, we'll see how the White House plans to help farmers in this economy. We're glad you're with us for Now Tonight from NBC News. These days, it can be tough dealing with rising food prices. It may be even tougher on the farmers who feed us. And they were President Biden's focus today. He visited a family farm in Kankakee, Illinois, that's about 50 miles south of Chicago. The president is underscoring the global impact of the war in Ukraine on food supplies and prices. Mr. Biden says his administration plans to support farmers and to increase domestic food production. And he put the blame for all this squarely on Vladimir Putin.
America is fighting on two fronts. At home, it's inflation and rising prices. Abroad, it's helping Ukrainians defend their democracy and feeding those who are left hungry around the world because Russian atrocities exist. And the American farmers understand Putin's war has cut off critical sources of food.
Joining us now is Asma Khalid, White House correspondent for NPR News. She's also the co-host of the NPR Politics podcast. It's so good to see you again. Welcome. Glad to have you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me. It's so good to see you.
Talk about the balance of what President Biden talked about today. How much of his address was focused more on the farmers and the policy agenda versus his focus on Vladimir Putin and the war on Ukraine?
I mean, really what we heard, Joshua, was this desire to talk about what essentially his administration can do to curb rising prices and specifically to aid farmers. And he spoke about the need to allow to reduce some of the bureaucratic obstacles to doing double cropping, say where a farmer can grow wheat and one part of the season, and then later in that same season, in the same plot of land, also grow soybeans. He also spoke about the need to increase the production of fertilizers and making sure that fertilizer prices are not, sort of exorbitant for farmers, and the fact that the Secretary of Agriculture was actually going to deal with this very issue in Europe with members of the G7. But, really, Joshua, I will say that all of these measures, and we can talk about this, sort of in more detail, all of these measures that the administration is trying to do to curb prices, whether it's gas, whether it's food prices, really are sort of at the margins, because ultimately there are greater global forces that are contributing to inflation at this point.
I'm glad you brought that up because the president did mention some of the global steps that are being taken to help domestic food production. Here's part of what he said.
They're going to see what actions we can take to increase fertilizer supplies globally and identify how we can work together to prevent export restrictions on food and agricultural inputs and bring more global production to market, which will stabilize prices and bring more certainty to our farmers and keep people from dying of hunger.
So we've got a G7 meeting coming up. How much of this G7 meeting locks into the president's plans? Are these intended to align in any way, or is he kind of hoping that the G7 will provide more of the relief that America's farmers need?
I would say thus far, the G7 members have been fairly united in terms of how to deal with the crisis in Russia and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The challenge they face, though, is that Ukraine has been historically the global wheat producer of the world. And so given the crisis going on, I mean, it's sort of natural to expect that there will be ripple effects throughout the food production supply. And we've seen that, we've seen ripple effects all throughout the world right now with rising prices. I do think, Joshua, though, that as much as the president, you heard him say today, that part of this is at the fault of Vladimir Putin and Russia's invasion, the challenge for him is that politically he's dealing with the fact that Republicans are eager to point this squarely on him, on Democrats, on his administration, and he is months away from an important midterm election.
Well, I was just going to ask you about Congress. I mean, what role do they play? There was a global food insecurity hearing today in the Senate, so clearly the topic has come up, but is that a sign that there is some room for consensus between Democrats and Republicans on this, or is the president kind of, I'd say, no, I see this, but I'm wishful thinking. I leave Washington for 2 years and all of a sudden I forget how it works. But what is that dynamic like in terms of Congress's role in dealing with these economic issues?
I mean, I would say thus far, most of what we've seen from this administration has happened unilaterally, right? From President Biden's direct initiative executive orders. We've seen, for example, his administration decide to announce the expansion of E15 gasoline over the summer. This is gasoline that has a higher percentage of ethanol mixed into it. Again, that's something that they acknowledge might help at the margin, say, drop the price of gas by about 10 cents a gallon. But right now, we're at record high gas prices, and people are extraordinarily frustrated. I mean, I say, don't need to tell this probably to any viewers, but, you go out, I talk to voters in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Democrat or Republican. They've been very frustrated with gas prices, the price of rent, the price of food. And so I will say that there are steps that the administration is taking. The E15 gasoline comes to mind, tapping the Strategic Petroleum Reserve comes to mind. That being said, even after those steps have been taken, we really are witnessing historic record levels of where gas is at this point. So I will say, I mean, I think that most economists I speak with speak to the fact that inflation is here for sort of a, I don't want to say long run, but for sort of a temporarily long phase at this point, right? Like this is going to go on, they say, into next year. And the latest inflation data that we saw does show that it's not just about gas, it's not just about food. Shelter, for example, has been one of the most important and problematic points where people are paying higher prices.
Is there any sense, Asma, of what would actually make the biggest difference right now? I mean, if Russia pulled out of Ukraine as we speak, right, this problem would not vaporize. There's still going to be the issue of restoring supply chains and logistics and replanting, and like there's a whole crop season that has to happen. So with just wheat, for example, that wouldn't be an instantaneous solution. Before I let you go, what is the best read in terms of what would make the biggest difference? Is it something that's in the president's power unilaterally, something he's got to do with Congress's help, something that's got to be done globally? I mean, what's the power move to really deal with inflation?
I mean, economists will tell you that the most powerful force here to curb inflation is the Federal Reserve. And they could raise interest rates, and that would potentially help curb inflation. And we've seen the Federal Reserve, indicate that that's something that they're going to do. Further, I think the challenge, though, is there are concerns about balancing rising interest rates with potentially also, increases to the unemployment level. And so I think it's a really delicate balance. But to answer your question, Joshua, I mean, there are limited things that any president can do. What we've seen this president, I think, acknowledge is that this is an extreme priority. And they need to do this because it's a salient or the salient issue for most voters in the country. And you see that in poll after poll. People are very frustrated with the economic situation right now.
NPR White House correspondent Asma Khalid. Asma, it's good to see you again. Thank you so much.
Good to see you too. Thank you.
Before we take a break, make a note to yourself to, 1, check out the NPR Politics podcast, fabulous show, and 2, stay tuned after this show. We have a special report from NBC's Vicki Nguyen about the fight against anti-Asian hate crimes. The racism virus looks into the solutions and the progress being made. That's next on NBC News Now. Still ahead, if you are sniffling and sneezing and fighting a fever, this year it might not be allergies. It could be the flu. An immunologist breaks down this unusual outbreak and what we can do just ahead. Stay close. If you're like me, you are trying desperately not to catch anything in the next few weeks to protect your vacation plans. Please, Jesus. But these days we have more to worry about than COVID. The flu is going around too in an unusually long season. It has been 4 decades since a flu season peaked this late in the year. Why is this happening now? How much does COVID have to do with it? And what should we know about getting a flu shot at this point in the season? Let's get into all that with Professor Robert Gary, a virologist from Tulane University. Professor Gary, welcome to the program.
Pleasure to be here.
So why is this happening? Why is this flu season peaking so much later than usual?
You know, nobody knows for sure, but there are a couple of possibilities that could explain it. The strain of the virus has probably changed a little bit. The vaccine that we were all given, or a lot of us were given, maybe doesn't protect against the current way the virus is presenting itself quite as well as it did when that vaccine was made. And then the other reason is probably COVID. A lot of the restrictions about meeting with people in groups and wearing masks and things have been relaxed in a lot of places. And it turns out that those same interventions that were helping to prevent the spread of COVID-19 also help prevent the spread of flu. And if we take those away, then there's an opportunity for all these respiratory viruses to spread.
You mentioned this strain of the flu, and there we can see the positive test rate by week. That blue line on the bottom is the current flu season, and those gray lines behind it are previous flu seasons from the beginning to the number of weeks in. As the gray lines get lighter, the flu seasons go back in time. So it's kind of like you're looking straight ahead back in time, and we can see how the peak is going up as those previous seasons had already kind of ended. Is this strain an uncommon one? Is it just one that this particular flu shot was not designed for? What do we know about this current flu strain?
Yeah, it's called the H3N2 strain, and it's a common strain of influenza virus. It hasn't really caused a pandemic since I was in high school back in 1968 or 69, so-called Hong Kong flu. But it's, a modern version of that virus. And it's basically, a virus we see pretty commonly. What's unusual this year is the peak that's late. Usually the flu, as you saw in those curves, peaks sometime in February or March. And a peak in May is pretty unusual.
Well, take a look at the positivity rate of this flu season, because there are kind of two peaks if you take a look at the graphic. It looked like the season was going to peak in December, and then it came down, and then it went back up in like mid-April. There's a zoomed-in graph from this year, just October to April. So it kind of went up, went down, and then psych, and turned right back around and went back up. What's up with the two peaks? Is there any rationale for why that would happen?
I mean, something happened. About that time, people started meeting with other people in groups, going to concerts, holding parties, things like that. Conditions where, we hadn't seen in the past, couple of years, the COVID years. And it just turned out that that was an opportunity for all respiratory viruses to spread. So, we got the flu. We got this strain that, is pretty good. And, we're seeing surges of cases in places like New Mexico and Colorado for the most part.
Yeah, if you look at the week ending April 30th in terms of flu in the U.S., it's pretty apparent that New Mexico got hit really, really hard, and then Colorado was not far behind. Now, I guess me naively would think you have large gatherings of people, you're going to expect to see spikes of different respiratory diseases thereafter. Coachella was just in California, and we're going to have all kinds of events all over the country. We got Lollapalooza coming up in the Chicago area. New York is going to have a slew of events this summer, but I don't know if it tracks that directly. Like, I can't think of why New Mexico would be the target right now.
It's hard to track it that closely. We don't know. I mean, the virus just happened to get into a few populations. It could have been any type, school, concerts, other types of meetings. It just got into a group of people, and then it was able to spread, across that state. It could happen to any state, any area, any time. We just don't know how to predict that.
Have we ever seen curves like this before that are this late in the year that might give us an indication of how long it would take for us to get back to kind of more of a normal rhythm with the flu, maybe like a few years out from more of the worst of COVID, presuming we don't have another major COVID strain? Is there any outlook for when this might normalize based on historical flu seasons?
You know, it really is difficult to say. I mean, COVID may have a long-lasting impact on us. I don't think we're quite out of the COVID-19 pandemic either. We're seeing some new strains of that virus, the BA.2.12.1 strain that's circulating, in the Northeast, but also in the Midwest now. We're starting to see cases, rise there. So, we're not out of that pandemic yet. Will it have a long-term impact on other respiratory diseases? Well, certainly in the past 2 years, it's had a dampening effect on flu. I mean, the numbers of cases of flu in 2020 and 2021 were extremely low. I mean, that was just almost mind-boggling to people like myself who follow and track these kinds of things. And so that was highly unusual. But it most likely had to do with people wearing masks and restricting their interactions with other people. Now that that's been relaxed a little bit, viruses like flu and certainly SARS-CoV-2 are having a bit more of a free rein.
SARS-CoV-2, the technical name for COVID-19. So before I have to let you go, what should we do? I mean, is it too late to get a flu shot? Is it worth getting one? Should we stick to the same kind of COVID restrictions we had before? I mean, people are going to travel. I would really, really like to take my vacation this summer. I'm crossing my fingers and toes. No. Please don't cancel my vacation.
I mean, I think we need to wait and see what happens with some of the COVID strains and the like. Let's hope for the best that the cases don't go up too far. What you can do, though, even this late, is to get an influenza vaccine. It's not too late. The pharmacies will still give them to you. If you haven't gotten your COVID-19 shots either, you can take those both at the same time. So even though it's late, even though it's unusual, I think it's still a good idea if you haven't gotten vaccinated to get both of those vaccines. And the most likely thing, if you get the vaccines, is that will keep you out of the hospital and keep you from dying from either one of these, pretty severe respiratory diseases.
Professor Robert Gary of Tulane University, appreciate you breaking this down for us tonight. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, Joshua. Thank you.
We will get to some of today's other top stories in just a moment, including the Senate vote to codify abortion rights into law, and a Palestinian-American journalist killed while covering the Israeli army in the West Bank. Our headlines tonight begin with abortion rights. Today, the Senate voted on a bill to codify them in case the Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade. That vote failed, as expected. Democrats did not have the 60 votes needed to overcome a Republican filibuster. So why vote at all? Well, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said he wants every senator on the record about abortion rights.
Before the day is over, every member of this body will make a choice. Vote to protect the fundamental rights of women across the country, or stand with 5 conservative justices ready to destroy these rights in one felled swoop.
All this comes as this legal and cultural debate heats up. Senators and Supreme Court justices are seeing more protesters outside their homes, including protesters tonight outside the home of Associate Justice Brett Kavanaugh, just north of Washington, D.C. They've been by his house at least twice tonight. NBC political correspondent Ali Vitale has more from Capitol Hill. Hey, Ali.
Joshua, this vote was expected to fail, and that's exactly what it did here, shaking out along the same lines that we saw back in February, the last time senators brought up the Women's Health Protection Act. And the same senators who voted for it then voted for it now, all 49 Democrats. But one Democrat, Joe Manchin, joined with Republicans to block this vote. That's exactly what we would have expected to happen. But nevertheless, this was a vote taken in a very different national landscape than that vote back in February. Democrats are now trying to paint this as a moment where the battle for reproductive rights is the central focus for them, not just here on the Hill, but also heading into the midterms. And as Vice President Kamala Harris left the Senate chamber today, that's exactly what I asked her. What's next here and what her message is? And this is what she told me. Listen.
This vote clearly suggests that the Senate is not where the majority of Americans are on this issue. It also makes clear that a priority for all who care about this issue, a priority should be to elect pro-choice leaders at the local, the state, and the federal level. Because what we are seeing around this country are extremist Republican leaders who are seeking to criminalize and punish women for making decisions about their own body.
And that messaging that you heard there from Vice President Harris, that's echoed by Democrats throughout the Hill, and frankly from President Biden himself, trying to paint this as an issue of Republicans being outside the mainstream on abortion, and frankly trying to tie this to former President Donald Trump by using statements and phrases like MAGA Republicans. We heard Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer say it time and again today after the vote failed. I imagine that's going to be the new messaging that we hear on this, again, as Democrats try to energize their base here and make this a key turnout issue in the election. But the time between now and November is really long in political time, and Democrats are going to have to keep their base engaged on this. There is an interesting split, though, that I would add on the way that Senate Republicans have talked about this versus the way that statewide Republicans have talked about this. Here in Washington, it's been kind of hard to get Senate Republicans to react to the substance of what this opinion would do if Roe were overturned. But there is conversation about the potential for a national federal ban. That's something that Democrats are trying to use. But by and large here, what Republican strategists have said to me is that Republicans are kind of the dog that caught the car on reproductive rights. Now that it's here, it is out of step with some of the mainstream American political thinking on this. Roughly 6 in 10 Americans think that abortion should be legal in some or most cases. You're going to be hearing Democrats talk about that a lot, even as Republicans focus on the leak and security of Supreme Court justices going forward. Joshua?
Thank you, Ali. That's NBC political correspondent Ali Vitale on Capitol Hill. This Friday, an OBGYN will join us to answer your questions about women's health. Everyone is welcome to submit any question you have, especially the men in our audience. Guys, let's be real. There's a lot we don't know about what women deal with. Now's the time to ask. Talk to us. We're at NBC Now Tonight on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. Leave us a brief but brilliant voicemail, 888-575-2NBC. That's 888-575-2622. Or email us nowtonight@nbcnews.com. The U.S. government is demanding answers after a Palestinian-American journalist was shot dead in Israel. This morning, Israeli forces reportedly shot Shireen Abu Akleh in the neck. That's according to her news outlet, Al Jazeera, and the Palestinian Health Ministry. Israeli officials say she was killed in an exchange of gunfire, but apparently they do not know who did it. Israel's Prime Minister Naftali Bennett seemed to suggest that armed Palestinians were responsible. He added that there must be an investigation. Ms. Abu Akleh was covering an Israeli raid in the West Bank city of Jenin. Al Jazeera says that she was clearly wearing a press jacket that identifies her as a journalist. State Department spokesman Ned Price condemned the incident and called for an independent investigation.
It is important to the world that investigation be thorough, that it be comprehensive, that it be transparent, and importantly, that investigations end with full accountability and those responsible for her death being held responsible for their actions.
NBC News is awaiting comment from the Palestinian Authority. Shireen Abu Akleh is survived by her brother. She was 51 years old. Meanwhile, another investigation is revealing an atrocity committed by the United States government. For more than a century, it supported boarding schools for indigenous children. This first-of-its-kind study details the traumatic abuse that tribal children endured, abuse that killed more than 500 students. NBC's Antonia Hilton has the story.
The report is a damning reckoning of America's dark past. The U.S. government acknowledging it intentionally targeted tens of thousands of indigenous children, sending them to boarding schools where they were forced to change their names and punished for speaking their languages, a policy the report calls traumatic and violent. The findings announced today by Deb Haaland, who is Laguna Pueblo and the first Native American cabinet secretary. Her grandparents were forced to attend the schools.
I am here because my ancestors persevered, and the work we will do with the Federal Indian Boarding School Initiative will have a transformational impact on the generations who follow.
The report found the U.S. operated or supported 408 boarding schools in 37 states from 1819 to 1969, the highest concentration in Oklahoma, Arizona, and New Mexico. There was rampant physical, sexual, and emotional abuse, disease, malnourishment, overcrowding, and a lack of health care. Children who broke the rules were disciplined with corporal punishment, such as solitary confinement, flogging, withholding food, whipping, slapping, and cuffing. The investigation has already determined hundreds of children died, but that number is expected to exponentially rise as more schools are studied. At least 53 burial sites have been found, some marked, some unmarked.
Our children deserve to be brought home.
You gotta admit that it happened.
Last year, I met Fred Kiogma, who was sent to Holy Childhood of Jesus boarding school in Harbor Springs, Michigan. The memories still haunt him, getting locked in a freezing closet, once forced to eat another child's vomit.
How have you been able to heal?
I don't know if I've been able to heal.
Holy Childhood never responded to NBC News' multiple requests for comment.
I think it's actually way overdue.
Today, Fred told me the report is a good first step.
It now can put to rest a lot of the people that came up missing, that went to school and never came home.
But there's been no formal apology from the U.S. government. The investigation will continue, trying to piece together the total number of students who attended the schools and identifying the remains found at burial sites. Tonight, many questions remain unanswered.
That was NBC's Antonia Hilton reporting. This economy has some folks looking for places to invest their wealth. One option, buying art. We'll show you some of the pieces making history this week, including one that sold for 9 figures. Before we go.
Adrien, last chance at $170 million. And Alex Rotter, you're definitely out as well. Here it is then, the gentleman's bid, ladies and gentlemen, at $170 million for the Warhol is selling here to you, sir, at $170 million.
Imagine, you just drop a hammer and pap, you spent 9 figures, just like that. That was the moment, pap, when art history was made. Right across the street, facing NBC studios on 49th Street, is the Christie's Auction House. We're 30 Rock, they're 20 Rock. And when that hammer fell, Andy Warhol's iconic portrait of Marilyn Monroe, hello gorgeous, sold for just under $200 million. That is a record for an American piece of art at auction. But it's not the only piece of art selling for astronomical prices, even in this economy. Let's get some insight into the art world from Robin Pogreman of the New York Times. She was at Christie's when the Warhol was sold. Welcome to the program. Good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
Talk about that moment. What was the energy like in the room? Were people expecting it to go for that much money? What are your top lines from the night of that auction?
It was an exciting night in part because it was good to be in person again after 2 years of kind of being remote, and exciting, I think, to be bidding art on the art live. And there was a lot of expectation around this piece. It is a very strong kind of iconic work of art, and I think there was no dispute about that. There was, however, real speculation that it could sort of fly to as much as 400 million. And the estimate, as you may know, was 200 million. So the fact that it sold slightly below, ultimately with fees, it was 195 million, was kind of counterintuitively a little bit of a letdown. I think there was some hope that there would be some great bidding war frenzy, but instead it was a little bit workmanlike and kind of eking out the bids and finally arriving, obviously, at a very strong price, but one that was not surprising or unexpected.
I'm sorry, did you say that was a bit of a letdown? I want to make sure I understand this, because I've never seen 9 figures. I haven't seen a 9-figure number on paper in my whole life. Was that a letdown? 190 million, really? What do you want?
There was a Da Vinci that went for 450 million, and so that is now kind of the high end of what's possible. And when you market something like this and you say this is the ultimate trophy, there's just no telling what the art market is going to go for. And that's what kind of makes our auctions exciting, is you just really don't know what's going to happen in the room. But yes, somebody went for it. We don't know who it is, but it is amazing that someone can afford to spend almost $200 million on a painting.
Yeah, and it's an amazing painting, right? Those Warhols that were made, I think, 2 years after Marilyn Monroe died in 1962, they're remarkable and they're valuable.
Yeah,
I just want to put a little context around that. The Walt Disney Company just reported quarterly earnings. The new movie Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness that came out just made $500 million in just the Chinese market in less than a week. So that's what 9-figure numbers mean, right? 500 million
Absolutely.
for China watching the new Doctor Strange movie versus almost 200 million for that painting. Why is there so much art right now? And it wasn't just the Warhol. There was a Basquiat, there was a Banksy, there was a Gerhard Richter that were sold at the Christie's auction. You see Abstraktes Bild by Gerhard Richter, portrait of the artist as a young derelict, Banksy's Diamond in the Rough. Why are there so many pieces going for so much money right now?
What's amazing is that art, it seems to be a kind of a Teflon sort of category where it's now established as an asset class. It's a good place to put your money as an investment. Clearly, it's bringing these numbers, so you can really make some money on selling art. But it also is remarkably immune to world events. We've got a war in Ukraine, as you know. We're coming out of a pandemic. Art endures, and when there are these blue chip, top-notch pieces, the rich people step up and they buy them. It is amazing. Even through 9/11, we saw it. Somehow, art, just continues to sell for these incredible prices.
We asked for some of your experiences buying art. Dee Green emailed us her pictures and experience of buying art from Rwanda. Dee Green writes, "We paid $200 for our first piece, then $1,100 for a fourth, and $200 for my husband's favorite because it has meaning of honor and strength of the bull." Thank you, Dee Green. Much appreciated. Robin, I wonder what your sense is of not only why people buy this, but what people should think of before they buy a piece of expensive art or memorabilia at a Sotheby's or a Christie's. I mean, you can see the auction lots online. They put up YouTube videos, so there's no secret of what they're selling and when they're selling it. But for someone who's never done this, what should they keep in mind?
I think the most important thing is buy what you love and you want to live with. There is definitely an aspect to art collecting that can be as an investment, and you can clearly trade up and you can clearly sell these things for great numbers. But, the art world really frowns on that. This is not supposed to be something that you flip for just, to kind of make a buck. It's about, a passion. And hopefully these works of art feed you in more of a kind of a spiritual and deep way. And you want to live around these pieces. And that's what's been exciting. Last night at Christie's, there were a lot of artists of color and women artists who sold for great numbers. And it's exciting to see them commanding these prices because this is, a very broad field, and it should include more than the usual suspects. And as long as people value art, I think it is worth spending money if you have it.
Before I let you go, there was one non-fungible token, an NFT, that sold last night for more than $1 million. This is a piece of digital art. What's the read now on NFTs in the art world? I got to admit, I'm hyper skeptical of NFTs for the future, but what's the smart money on that?
I have to admit, I'm right there with you. I'm a little bit old-fashioned. It's hard for me to get my head around. You hear a lot about NFTs. It's kind of all the rage in terms of talking about it. I'm just not sure how much people are going to feel that they can actually, this is a tangible piece of art that they can live with and enjoy. That really, I think the jury is out on that one. But there is clearly an excitement around it, a curiosity around it, and there are, there are big prices. There are NFTs in art sale, in art fairs. I think we're going to have to keep our eye on it. But right now, I think for the diehard collector, you kind of want an actual painting you can have on your wall.
Yeah, when I walked out of work last night toward what is usually the skating rink, which is now a roller rink, there was a huge panel, looked like it was 15 feet high, over in front of 50 Rockefeller Plaza, and it was showing that image, that NFT.
Exactly.
And I looked, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Now I know what it was. $1 million picture.
Right.
Learn something every day.
Exactly.
Robin Pogrebin of the New York Times, appreciate you explaining this to us. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for making time for us. Please keep sending us your questions about women's health for this Friday. A panel of OBGYNs will join us. We welcome questions from men as well. Frankly, we probably have the most to learn, and now's a good time. Reach out at NBC Now Tonight on social media. Leave us a voicemail, 888-575-2NBC, or email nowtonight@nbcnews.com. Until we meet again, I'm Joshua Johnson. We'll see you tomorrow, but sit tight. Our coverage continues with the racism virus, a special report by Vicki Nguyen, next on NBC News Now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.